Immigration is the backbone of many a country, and people immigrate to someplace new for all sorts of reasons. Perhaps for new opportunities, to get away from violence, a collapsing government, to expand business ventures, or other reasons. But the deciding factor is almost always the chance for a better life for the family involved. So the idea of finding a new start for your family in a place with greater opportunities, only to turn around and murder your own family because you felt they betrayed the traditional values you seemingly left behind, it can turn one's stomach. This is the story of Tuba Muhammad Yahya and the case of the Shafia family murders. To understand what brought Muhammad Yahya to kill her 3 teenage girls, we need to go back to where her and the story of her husband began, all the way back in the late 1980s. At that time, a man by the name of Muhammad Shafia moved with his family to Pakistan from neighboring Afghanistan, before eventually making their way to Australia and finally back to the United Arab Emirates. And it was here where Muhammad Shafia made his fortune in real estate in the booming country. And after making his fortune, he moved west, finally settling in Montreal, Canada in 2007. In many respects, it was a dream story of wealth and success. But everything was not perfect with Shafia, the first hurdle to happiness coming after he married Rona Amir in 1980. You see, Rona was unable to have children after it was found out that she was infertile. As Shafia wanted to extend his bloodline, he decided to take Tuba Yahya as his second wife. She was only 17 at the time, and live in a polygamous marriage in order to raise children. Yahya would bear 3 daughters, and Rona would help raise them as if they were her own. While this was something more or less allowed in their native land, when immigrating west to Canada, Rona was presented as an aunt within the family and on a visitor's visa, thus allowing the family to enter and continue to practice their form of Shia Islam, of which Rona did not herself practice. It was maybe because of this that those close to Rona would later tell reporters that she was trapped in a loveless and abusive marriage, trying for years for her husband to grant her a divorce, something impossible as Canada didn't even consider her as married. It was even alleged that Yahya would tell Rona, "You are a slave, you are a servant," causing the woman to fear for her life. To keep her in check, Shafia and Yahya would keep Rona's passport and all forms of identification to prevent her from leaving or seeking help. This was a tense situation and only made worse as the 3 daughters began to date and express themselves in a more traditional Western manner as they were being raised now in Canada. On top of all these issues, Shafia would become enraged after finding out that his oldest daughter had begun seeing a boy. The pressure of his second wife wanting her freedom and the stress of his daughters not abiding by the family's traditional beliefs all seemed to be too much and would end up with the family's black Nissan Sentra submerged at the bottom of a lock. Shafia would report his 3 girls and Rona missing to police, who in turn would discover the vehicle with the 4 bodies at the bottom of the Kingston Mill lock. Upon investigation, the car showed damage to the left taillight when recovered, leading police to suspect it may have been rammed. What strengthened this idea was the fact that the family's oldest son had reported that the other family vehicle a Lexus SUV, was in a minor accident the morning of the accident with the other family vehicle. Police would later assess the damage and would find evidence that the SUV had rammed the Nissan into the lock. It also came to light that the family only purchased the Nissan Sentra the day before the murders for $5,000, lending more evidence that the accident was elaborately staged as a way to silence Rona from speaking out, and as a form of honor killing against the girls for not abiding by the twisted version of the religion that they practiced. What followed was a case that would eventually see the Islamic Supreme Council of Canada, as well as other Canadian Muslim organizations, publicly denouncing domestic violence and honor killings as un-Islamic. Imams from across Canada and the United States also issued a moral ruling that condemned any form of honor killing and listed domestic violence and misogyny as un-Islamic. Several noted that the Shafia family and others used misinterpretations of the Quran to justify their heinous actions. Shafia, Yahya, and their son Hamed would plead not guilty at their trial and state through an interpreter that they did not commit the murder and that the trial itself was unjust. But the trial would stretch on for 3 months before the jury would head into deliberations. During arguments, the Canadian Crown would suggest that the road trip in question, where Zainab, 19, Shahar, 17, and Gidi Shafia, 13, along with Rona Muhammad, was entirely a plot to kill the four, as they had all tainted the family's honor. Rona with wanting a divorce, and with the 2 eldest daughters wanting boyfriends, something prohibited within the strict boundaries of the rules of the home. It was noted in court that the daughters resisted by having secret boyfriends, wearing fashionable clothes, and fighting the wearing of the traditional hijab. The Crown noted that photos were found of the girls, as members of the family had spied on them and reported back their actions, their clothing, and interactions with the opposite sex to the father. A search of the family computer, used mostly by the eldest son, would also reveal searches for where to commit murder, as well as searches for locations with large bodies of water. But the most damning evidence came from wiretaps that showed the family talking about the Kingston locks at night, and about how important family honor was to them.
The usually stone-faced father broke down in tears a couple of times during his testimony. "My children did a lot of cruelty to me." Accused of killing his 3 daughters and first wife, Muhammad Shafia described himself as a caring parent, betrayed by his lying children. Quote, "I did a good job. They hid it away from us. What they did was not right." Shafia said his eldest daughter Zainab asked for his forgiveness after marrying a Pakistani man, a marriage annulled the same day. He also said he was surprised to find photos of daughter Sahar with her boyfriend after she died. "When I saw the pictures, I was upset. I never expect this from my children." He says he didn't interfere in his children's lives or in how they dressed. He admitted he slapped 2 of them once after they came home late, but not 13-year-old Giti. "I love them like I could have loved my own life." A stark change from words heard during wiretap evidence. "May the devil on their graves." Shafia offered little in the way of an explanation except to say God will be the judge. Shafia maintained Zainab asked for the car keys the night the 4 went missing during a stop in Kingston after a family trip to Niagara Falls. Police later notified him they were found in a black car at the bottom of the Rideau Canal. Under cross-examination, he said, "It's not just 4 people who were killed. 3 of us are in prison and the others aren't in the family home. It's not just 4 people who are dead, it's 10 people. His wife Tuba Yahya and son Hamed are also charged with first-degree murder. Lama Nicola, Global News.
Experts at the trial would later link the damage on the 2 vehicles, and police interviews would show the inconsistencies about the family's story. While they would all initially stick to a script, the three would later vary in details or completely recant their stories as police continued their investigation. But one thing we will never know is just how the four women were killed. While they did drown in the lock, they did so with the windows down and seemingly sitting still, as no indication was shown that they fought to get out of the vehicle. Their seatbelts were unbuckled, and their seats reclined in an awkward position. The Crown would suggest that the four were killed or incapacitated before being driven out to the lock and pushed into it by the family's SUV. They noted that fresh bruising on 3 of the 4 victims were found to help support this claim. But the defense team for the Shafia family would present their own version of events, saying that there was no proof on exactly how the car went into the water, and that it all could have been an accident. The oldest son would tell a private investigator hired by the father a very different story from one he told police. He would note that he followed the girls to the lock and rear-ended the car by accident when they stopped suddenly in front of him. He then got out of the car to inspect the damage and pick up the pieces of his own broken headlight when the car plunged into the lock. He told the investigator that he called their names and even dangled a rope for them, but when they did not respond, he left the area for Montreal, not reporting the incident as he feared his father's anger. Hamed said that he staged the entire accident angle in Montreal the next morning as a way to cover for the damage police found to the SUV that he was driving. His lawyer noting that Hamed was only guilty of being stupid and not of murder. But the jury didn't buy any of the explanations given, as they would return guilty verdicts on all 4 counts of first-degree murder. For her part, Tubad Muhammad Yaha was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for 25 years. Yahya would have her appeal dismissed in 2016, and after this, began to speak more about the murders openly. She was also granted a temporary supervised release to visit the grave of her mother in 2019. She even filed papers for divorce from Shafia in 2017, and has not spoken to him since. Her husband has refused to sign the papers.